Welcome to the FMCG Guys, the podcast that dives into the innovation, strategy, and trends shaping consumer goods and retail in Europe and beyond.
Welcome to the FMCG Guys, your favorite consumer goods and retail podcast. I'm Daniel Torres, connecting live from Barcelona and accompanied by the one and only Cristina Nicolau. How are you, Cristina?
I'm doing very well, Daniel. Very hyped after the event that we had this week in London, which was amazing.
I know. What a week, eh? We had Candid Commerce, which is our flagship event, I would like to say. Second time we did it. And it felt like... we're getting a hang of it now. I felt like we felt like naturals a little bit this time.
We filled up an auditorium, like people actually flew in for us. I mean, that was, above expectations, let's say.
Yeah, it was a bit of a pinch me moment. And actually, I'll use the platform to say thanks to everyone that obviously spoke, but also, and I think that's important, to everyone who came and participated of the event, be it asking questions, but also networking before giving us feedback. I think we really lived up to what we want to build at Candid Commerce, which is basically get a room full of people.
The community.
Yeah, exactly. Get a room of people that have similar interests, in a similar wavelength in different ways. And are there like speaking openly and candidly. A lot of the attendees, I think, were very... I don't know what you heard, Cristina, but a lot of people told me like they really like the candidness, of people and the honesty that you don't normally hear.
Yes, I think the name has been spot on of Candid Commerce. And, we have this goal of creating the safe space. And a lot of people felt like, okay, here's where I can speak openly about the things that are in my mind and possibly in most of the people's mind in the audience that we had. So I felt like that was my KPI, to tell you the truth, to make sure that we have these kind of like open conversations. So I felt like it was a success.
Yeah, I feel like the first one we did in Amsterdam was good and we got a lot of participation towards the end. What I really liked of this one is I felt like we had participation right from like the first panel already. People were very engaged and really open to participating.
Indeed. And now we continue our conversations through the podcast.
Exactly. I mean, here that's basically what we're doing is bringing like the spirit of the podcast to a live event. We just happen to call the FMCG Guys podcast, not the Candid podcast, but you'll find plenty of candidness here. And today, to speak candidly about a very hot topic. So revenue management has been a topic we haven't covered so much. The other episode that we did about revenue management with Gustavo Mendonça from Kraft Heinz has done very well. So that's a topic that was definitely on our radar, especially on Cristina's, I have to say. So happy to bring another Greek person to the podcast, Nikitas Paraskevopoulos, Global Head of Revenue Management at Bayer Consumer Health. Hey, Nikitas.
Hey, pleasure to be here. Almost there with my last name.
Yeah, almost there.
Almost.
I hope you got a bit of FOMO about our event and you'll be coming in the future ones.
I would be very happy to.
We have had more people that have asked us to do like more commercial work. So I think having a panel around revenue management could be an interesting one.
Yes, I've been a big supporter of that. You know that, Daniel.
Yes, she's, it's all credit due to Cristina that we bring in this conversation to the table, which I think generates a lot of interest. So Nikitas, you're joining us from Zurich, you mentioned, right?
Yes, I'm living in Zurich. I'm part of Bayer Consumer Health, that our headquarters is in Basel, Switzerland.
So is that what, 3/4 of an hour commute or something like that?
Yes, something like that. Yeah, with a very easy commute and with Swiss train.
Yeah, they're always on time, they say, no?
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect.
Except the train comes from Germany.
Yeah.
I got the Swiss joke. Well, it's not.
I mean, they're having some problems with the trains in Germany from what I hear. So Nikitas, we'll go more into your current role later, but you can give us a quick summary of how you got here.
Yeah, for sure. I'm originally Greek, as you mentioned. I was born and raised in Athens. I did pharmacy as a first degree, so the full science degree with the traineeship. I worked in pharmacy store. I worked in public hospital. Enough to know that I don't want to actually pursue this for the next 40 years or whatever a career is within the four walls of a pharmacy store. Not to say that it's not an amazingly important job, but somehow it didn't feel it is for me. I started working very early in my family business, where we started about the time I finished school. It was in food industry, in producing jams, sauces, spreads. The name is GOD. And I did essentially a lot of things there. I was involved. I worked in every corner of the company, like from startup operations to eventually kind of taking up business development, sales and marketing. I did there 7, 8 years. And then I thought I need to learn more. So I went abroad. I left Greece and I did my master's in business administration in the Netherlands. And then I worked also for a moon, I would say, for 2 years in Deloitte Consulting in strategy and operations, until I joined Bayer 7 years ago as part of the initial revenue management team that was forming up as a new capability back then in Bayer Consumer Health. In the beginning, responsible for North America, Latin America. I worked a lot in the US, also in Mexico City for Central and Latin America. And then I took up a different role, which was strategic pricing, which was more elevating a little bit of the revenue management type capabilities to connect it to our divisional strategy, category strategies, and strategic business planning. And then eventually, for the past 2.5 years, I'm leading the whole team of revenue management in Bayer Consumer Health out of Basel, as I mentioned. We have a strong global network of around 35, 40 practitioners of revenue management, and of course a lot of opportunities in our company.
A lot of opportunities for sure, but you have like an amazing background, which is quite diverse, right? I felt like it was pretty much organic for you, the way that you switched from kind of the healthcare side to the business side, because you were already on it a little bit with your family. That's kind of like how you feel you got into it.
Yeah, I mean, it came through actually practice and through understanding the day-to-day challenges, but more. First of all, I didn't see myself as a pharmacist. I thought I would like to do drive more of a systemic change. And also I was very passionate about the consumer business, probably because of the interaction with my family business. And I wanted to, I think FMCG and consumer health sector offers great opportunities to also scale the impacts if you go global, right? So that's a little bit of a natural path.
Totally. And I think also you've been, I don't know if I would say lucky, but maybe fortunate would be the right word, to also join revenue management at a time where it's really being developed in a consumer good company. So what does revenue management look like for you? And also could be interesting to hear, like, what is the difference between revenue management and pricing?
First of all, I joined revenue management because I was done being a consultant, honestly, and I wanted to go back to commercial. And I didn't know what revenue management was before, but it sounded, I read a lot about it and it sounded extremely interesting as a general management capability. So to me, revenue management is, I would say, analytical commercial capability that touches multiple levers that different commercial functions are responsible for, and kind of optimizes this value equation. I would say, to me, net revenue management, strategic revenue management, revenue growth management, or simply revenue management are just different terminology for the same analytical capability. But to your point, there is a big difference between a holistic revenue management capability and traditional pricing function.
Yeah, and I guess like it's been a buzzword lately. Like a few of the consultants I've worked with from different big companies in the past years, they were in the past working a lot of digital stuff, B2B. Now everybody is doing RGM decks and presenting to FMCG companies. So I'm wondering, like from your perspective, that you've been in this for a minute, right? Have you seen the approach that the companies have changed in the past years, and why is it now such a big thing?
I mean, probably it started, 20 years ago, but there were very few players. I think 10 years ago, it really became a buzzword as a capability in the sense that, markets had very big difficulty driving growth, finding growth, right? So revenue growth management is a holistic capability that doesn't focus solely on volume growth to drive value, but looks at it holistically across the levers like portfolio pricing, price pack architecture, active mix management, promotion optimization, or better trade terms and more pay for performance kind of terms. So companies are responding to inflation, evolving consumer behaviors, and margin pressures. And RGM is key and is seen as an actual growth driver, not just a back office pricing function anymore. And there has been a probably third wave revolution nowadays with the big tech and AI enablement on top that really brought, again, RGM in the forefront.
And if you had to break it down, just linking it on like what you actually do with revenue management, if you had to break down the levers in RGM, like pricing, portfolio optimization, what are they and how do they, if you have to tell your friend in a bar what you do for a job, how would you break it down?
Yeah. That's it would be difficult to discuss about RGM in a bar, but I'll try my best.
I've seen Stranger Things.
Yes, of course. I mean, it's to me it's interesting because the RGM it's a holistic function, and I said strategic function, and it's very cross-functional. We work with marketing, we work with trade marketing, commercial finance, and sales and customer teams, key accounts teams. And that's why I say it's really a general management capability, because you have to really understand those functional incentives. You have to be in their shoes, and you have to actually decide on those traders. So also the different levers reflect a little bit of a heavier exposure to a certain function. You start with strategic pricing, portfolio pricing. These are typically more strategic, positioning type of engagements and strategies you build with a marketing team. Then in price pack architecture, you have to really translate those pricing strategies into the right price of the right product in the right channel, right? And then with mix optimization, you really look at the assortment, and you really understand how you could leverage distribution visibility to maximize the return. And then you go into more kind of trade marketing levers on consumer promotion optimization. So looking at your spend with consumers, discounts, displays, stuff like that, and understanding what are the highest ROI activities and how you could actually optimally spend your promotional budget, down to really heavy commercial kind of contractual type of terms that you have with customers that you probably negotiate annually or so, and are, completely sales driven, right? Commercial policies with customers, and our sales team. So you really interact across functions, but with a single kind of objective to win in markets, to drive top line and bottom line. So that really fascinates me.
I love that we're going to leave this episode and you're going, Nikita, to have Daniel actually understand and advocate for RGM.
Did you agree on something before the call or something?
Yeah, that was the setup. I have a question though. Like, you work at Bayer, right? So in a regulated industry, how many of those levers can you really pull, and how constrained are you to work with RGM?
Yeah. First of all, consumer health is, I would say, not as regulated as pharma industry, right? First of all, but indeed, you are right. In very big chunk of our business, there are regulations, there are compliance issues, and things like that. I would say that we also have categories that are completely not regulated, like, I don't know, nutritionals or cosmetics and so on, or others that are actually much more regulated. There is a little bit of, I would say, as consumer health, we have a little bit of a special responsibility to drive value for all stakeholders. And it's not just shareholders, but it's also consumers, healthcare providers, and generally society. Our mission in consumer health is rooted in empowering people to take charge of their health, of their self-care, self-treatment, and make it, a reality to them. So RGM has actually a really unique role, probably, in consumer health, unlike probably traditional consumer goods companies where consumption-driven approaches often dominate. Consumer health requires a little bit of more balanced commercial strategy with responsibility to deliver health outcomes. So many of those products that we're selling are essential to support your everyday self-care. So our approach to RGM must ensure that we are not only driving profitability, but also enabling access and affordability for our consumers.
Interesting. And for people that are listening to us and they're working in RGM in like other categories of FMCG, do you think that there would be a big learning curve for them to go into consumer healthcare?
I mean, there are a lot of topics. Definitely not data and promotions is I would say the biggest competitive edge of consumer health industry. But I think there are really great learnings for broader FMCG, CPG on these affordability, accessibility of consumer products. How you do that with the right portfolio, how you drive penetration, how you unlock penetration, how you really understand willingness to pay, and offer those products to billions of people. I think that's a big difference. Instead of looking only at how we drive consumption, is how we drive billions of people to actually use our products, right? And this is probably also a huge unlock from a commercial perspective. It's a little bit of a different mindset, and I think consumer health could probably be the front runner in consumer business in general on how you do that.
Your role is global now, right?
Yeah.
So you see lots of different countries. How does this work when you have like a central global like function driving RGM? Is it kind of like the same things, same levers as you said that you can put in all those markets? It must be quite different, no?
Yeah, it is very different. And consumer health is also extremely diverse. So we have markets where we serve 20,000 pharmacies. We have markets with traditional modern trades, right? With big accounts and very consolidated trade. We have markets that we approach largely through e-commerce or through indirect wholesale models. So indeed, there is not one single central approach that we're pushing out. I would say overall, there are more mature markets where you focus more on premiumization and value driving strategies. There are more emerging markets with huge populations where we prioritize also more affordability, accessibility with innovative pricing and packaging, for example. And overall, we try to have a very consistent global framework, but that we can enable local tailored execution based on the market needs. But there is no one kind of approach that fits all, unfortunately, and that's the very big difficulty. And that also impacts very much our data landscape, which is the biggest.
Mm.
Speaking of data, by the way, like the work that you do is touching so many things that these things are effectively data points in many data points. Each thing, as I call it, has many data points. How do you manage data and analytics? What role do they play in the life of a head of RGM?
I mean, as an analytical commercial capability, we are very much relied on data and data quality for sure. So we are ambassadors of data-driven commercial decisions, right? So data is key, but because of the diversity of markets, we don't see the same maturity across. Overall, I would say we use standard inputs of data like our financial sell-in information, sell-out information, market data, plus panel, plus some trade promotion data, and so on. But then the granularity is very different by market. So that's where actually we're deploying recently new technologies like machine learning or Gen AI even to fix that. Or at least we are exploring with how we could really accelerate the bringing the higher quality of data together so that we can fuel our advanced analytics and insights and drive better decisions.
A lot of the decisions that you're taking ultimately are determined by data and models and frameworks, no?
Yeah.
Christina, you're looking to me as like, obviously it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course it is. But what I want to mention is like, okay, all data and all modeling is good, but then you've got like COVID hitting or multiple supply chain disruptions, and you've got high inflation and lots of volatility everywhere. So I'm really wondering, like, how do you guys cope with all that in terms of RGM?
That's obviously very difficult and challenging for the business, but it's a huge opportunity actually for RGM, right? So inflation demands a balance between pricing and delivering value to consumers, but you can not only do pricing, right, when your costs are increasing. Supply chain challenges require agility and proactive adjustments. And there are a lot of opportunities by looking at price pack architecture, active mix management, or innovation pricing, for example, to just help mitigate. So RGM is a holistic framework that helps optimize for those disruptions and ensure that you are on a path of sustained growth. So definitely all those macroeconomic trends are actually, RGM could be a big unlock.
I love how you talk about RGM, not so much in the sense of here's how we're driving efficiencies or kind of like enabling, but rather how we're unlocking further growth, which I feel like it's quite a big mindset shift that we still wait for some companies kind of like to do.
And again, basically what you're doing is looking like at the whole value chain of the company, no? So how do you like get involved with your marketing, finance, supply chain colleagues to create that value? Because ultimately, when you're seeing it end to end, you can see that value is not unlocked only in the sales, but actually in every part of the company.
Yeah, it's not always easy, right? So that you could really use RGM to break some of those traditionally kind of framed silos. But it's not easy because you really have to understand those functional incentives You really have to explain. I mean, I would say the biggest barrier beside data is also awareness of what RGM function could deliver as a strategic growth driver instead of just a back office kind of experts that help us when we need to increase prices by how much, right? So in the end, you do that. It's challenging. It's a lot of advocacy for what RGM can deliver, and you need to create shared ownership of those RGM initiatives. So with our clear frameworks and communication, we try to get this done, but it's a journey.
And in time, since you've been in RGM for some years now, have you seen like a difference in terms of like how it's perceived internally?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you don't have to explain it anymore. Like, at least in my company, we have been on this journey. We have managed to have data that we would never imagine in the beginning because of this kind of sponsorship. I remember 7 years ago we were describing how important pricing is. Maybe we had markets that we hadn't taken price for years, right? And then COVID happened, and then post-COVID and all this. So, and the huge inflation wave, and countries had to do it. And fortunately, we were there to inform it so that we don't destroy business, but we do it in the right way, in a balanced way. And now we are facing we are embedding stuff, and we go to the next challenge. Now I think everyone understands the value of pricing and pricing strategically, and when you have the right to, or pricing for access and value-based pricing. But then, how do you link levers and how you address those challenges of finding growth more holistically and using the capabilities across the levers? I think that's our next challenge now, but definitely there is good traction, and there are also some very interesting accelerators around.
Yeah, and I guess like now it's kind of the second, third year of FMCG results. Press release coming out, and we clearly see how this challenge of how exactly companies approach pricing and what they've been doing in the past couple of years, how it's resulting now with the consumer sentiment. But Nikita, you've been also like in other functions, right? You didn't just start working in RGM from day one. So do you think like your experience having been in operations or even in consulting, has this helped you now understanding a little bit better, as you mentioned, like the functional incentives and where people are coming from when they're asking you questions?
Yeah. I will, probably not answer about myself specifically. I think what enables someone to do RGM is definitely to have worked in a commercial function, sales or marketing. I think dealing with data and analyzing data and an analytical mindset in general always helps, and very strong financial acumen too. So I've seen people in RGM coming from finance or from sales or even marketing, right? So I think a lot of you could use RGM also as a station, as a backpack item, and I think it's essential capability for also future general managers, right? So that's also what we see a lot in our company, that we make sure that we bring talent and commercial talent from markets to the RGM network, and then we bring them back in even general management positions. And I've had countless examples of that in Bayer Consumer Health.
So you see it more as a generalist career building type of stepping stone, more than like a function for a specialist, no?
Yeah, I'm not in HR, but I have very, very clear kind of business objectives to go after. But I would say, yes, I think it's an essential commercial capability for every commercial leader.
So Nikita, I don't know if I don't think I told you, maybe you don't know, but my background is in recruitment. So indeed, I was reading it through this lens.
Yeah.
And this is why we're explaining it so much. But Nikita, you already mentioned a little bit like technological advancements, AI. So where do you see RGM going? Like, what are we expecting in the next years?
I mean, I think that I truly believe that actually AI will shift the paradigm and help in this democratization of the RGM capabilities. The question is who will do it soon enough, well, in order to create those, to use RGM as a competitive advantage. I think AI and those kind of most recent digital technologies offer two kind of dimensions of acceleration to the RGM capability. One is on the data side, like that I mentioned before, that could really help accelerate and bridge fragmented data and so on. And the other is in shifting analytics from descriptive and diagnostic to really forward-looking, projective, predictive, prescriptive. Now, also, because this now is not theory, as it was a few years ago, and we see so many applications of that around, I think this poses a very big philosophical, if I may, dilemma to RGM leaders in FMCG and CPG industry. Should we invest on the traditional way, on really democratizing those capabilities, teaching every person why RGM is important and teach them how to go through the structured analytics? Or we should actually have machines to give them the right insights and prepare them for success. In other words, should we drive more people? Should we teach more people how to drive a car? Or should we actually offer them self-driving cars? You know, how we move from here, then it is very different, right? The first is the traditional approach that we are trying to kind of increase awareness and so on. And the other side is we really built a very strong kind of center of advanced capability that works on the background and offers people without specialized skill set this. I mean, I'm not so much a proponent of the second one, and I believe the truth would be somewhere in the middle. And I think always building RGM culture would be extremely relevant.
This is very interesting. And I guess it's going to also change what makes a company have kind of like the competitive advantage, right? So is it going to be talent or is it going to be just better tech that's driving the company?
Exactly. And the question is, who would do it first? Will you invest in people or in tech, and will you do it right so that you actually win? You know, so it's a very big bet.
And also, how do you invest in having like a very strong central team and very strong talent in the central team that has a lot of influence in the company? Or do you have it, as you said, decentralized in the company where people learn?
In Bayer Consumer Health, our overall operating model is quite decentralized, right? So we operate in the way our operating model works. And that said, we have this very strong community of experts that we exchange and we still with pride, and we kind of bring the next future capabilities and we define kind of priorities at this point in time. If you ask me, I don't know if a very centralized or decentralized approach works best. I think centralized offers uniformity, decentralized tailored outcomes to the market needs. So the question still is, between invest in people capabilities and deepen those capabilities, or invest in advanced technologies. At Bayer, we try to do a little bit of both. We call it RGM DNA and RGM muscle. RGM DNA is more about driving this awareness across commercial functions of the value that RGM can bring. And RGM muscle refers to our network of experts that requires constant training and strengthening to drive better results.
Very cool. And it will be interesting. I mean, there's so many things of modern business and organizations that will be interesting to watch how they evolve. But this is no exception, clearly. You've had a very interesting career, Nikitas. Putting on my recruitment hat on again, you've basically had like 4 careers. You started working in a fairly conventional, traditional job in a pharmacy. Then you went to your family business. Then you became a consultant, which is a career on its own. And for the last, 7, 8 years, you've been at Bayer. So big corporate multinational as well. Maybe your next one would be like to go, if you went into local markets, that would even be another career practically. But my question is, with everything that you've learned in your career, which I guess you've learned a few things, if you had to go back to yourself as you were starting, if you could give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
Yeah, exactly. When I was studying pharmacy or selling store by store or even doing my master's, I never planned on becoming revenue growth management leader at some point. I didn't even know what it is. But actually RGM offers some of the key ingredients that I love to my day-to-day, this strategic perspective, cross-functional collaboration, and strong commercial impact. Look, I would say probably stay curious, embrace change, and keep learning, because obviously in my case, but also in a more sane person's career path, I think curiosity and learning agility are key, especially with what's happening. Everything is now changing, and you really need to have to be outward looking, to look around, to listen carefully. So yeah, I would say stay hungry and humble, something like that.
This was Nikitas Paraskevopoulos, Global Head of Revenue Management at Bayer Consumer Health. Christina, what are your key takeaways of our second conversation of NRM?
RGM NRM is possible as well. First of all, I like that we really discussed kind of like what are the levers, because we usually talk about like there are many of those. Yeah. So it's very clear. And I think that it was very good that Nikitas mentioned how it's something that's cross-functional, right? So you need to really understand what are the other functions, incentives, because it's not something like you've got an analyst sitting in an office on their own and they make magic. It's a lot about, from strategic pricing and portfolio pricing to kind of like the price pack architecture. We have a famous acronym at Coke. We call it OBPPC, okay. Like the occasion, price, pack, and the brand and the channel. And that's kind of like the things that you need to decide on what product, at what packaging do I put in which channel for which occasion, essentially, and how do I price that? Then you have all the stuff around mix, from kind of like what's the right assortment, what do I distribute where, how do I make it visible, what do I hear, what not, and then all the way down to trade marketing and even the commercial agreements. So it's a lot of things to unpack, and you have different stakeholders in each case that you need to bring in the conversation to make it happen.
Yeah, how, from your experience, out of curiosity, how do you normally interact with NRM? Like what type of recommendations are revenue managers normally giving the business?
Well, I would say that it is across all of those different levels that we mentioned. So there is no way that you are going to go like into your ABP planning for next year and you won't have also the kind of specific RGM inputs. And every time you have, for example, a new initiative, a new launch, you will have to go through across all those levers and make sure that you review the value chain from a revenue growth driving point of view. And let's not think of it as like a name, but let's take the actual words, make it up, right? Revenue growth. You really want to grow your revenues. There are practically 2 ways to go about it. If you don't do RGM, one is, okay, I'm just going to sell more, so I increase my volume, or I'm going to price it more. And then you have RGM coming in and saying, here's how I'm going to unlock more growth for you beyond just saying sell it at a higher price and sell more stuff.
Yeah. No, it's very interesting because as Nikita said, it's really a function where you feel like you see the value chain and you really get to understand the business. I can understand why it would be one of the stepping stones of becoming a GM later.
Yes, and this is why it's also quite important what he was mentioning on which kind of profiles would be the best fit for RGM, that you don't want someone who's just an analyst, right? I mean, you need that as well. But these kind of hard skills you can get. You need good business acumen, financial acumen. So I like how he positioned it as kind of like a stop in your career path, in kind of like more of a generalist or general management career path.
Yeah. What about the crossroads between data, tech, and people?
Actually, I think that this is a very interesting point that I expect will come up a lot more in the conversations in the months and years to come. And not only in RGM, but overall. What is it that companies need to, focus on right now, and where do they allocate their resources? Is it going to be like building in-house super tech capabilities, or getting the best possible people and building the organizational talent? I don't know, like from your point as a recruiter, what do you see?
Well, I'm going to tell you actually as host of this podcast.
Yeah.
The other episode we did about revenue growth management was around the crossroads of digital and revenue growth management, right? So I did feel like it was going to be very decisive. And here it felt like people will still be at the core of it. Not that they're not compatible, these two approaches, but like anything, I think that it's two different strategies and they're both equally valid. It just depends on how you organize, how you govern, and how you execute, no?
Yeah, and as time goes by, also like investment needed in tech, it's going to get cheaper, right?
Yeah.
So at some point,
how good the tech develops as well.
Yeah. This as well. And also ultimately, Nikitas mentioned a lot about data and also how hard it is to get like good quality, consistent data across different markets, different channels. So you don't just need your analytical skills to evolve as a company. You also need to be able to feed it with quality data. And I'm not sure how fast this part is going to evolve. It is evolving a lot. Is it fast enough? I'm not sure. With what I've seen in the past 10 years, I would have had expectations of even, a more accelerated evolution.
Yeah, no, and that's another space which will keep on. Just reflecting also on the conversations we had at Candid Commerce, that will be keep on evolving as well.
Absolutely. And also, we've had guests coming in, for example, discussing retail media in store. And we haven't even unlocked this part of the data yet. And then you have all the world that still operates in the fragmented trade. It's definitely going to be an interesting few years to be monitoring this space as route to market evolves, data evolves with it, and then the decisions that companies make will ultimately also kind of like play a role and be perhaps a decisive factor.
Yeah. And of course, we'll be continuing to explain all this on the podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in. As always, do keep in touch, not in touch, informed through our LinkedIn page. Also, if you're curious to know or you want to come on the podcast, you can get in touch with Christina, with Efrain, or with myself. And also to know about our future events, which we have an ambitious agenda around that to get the community together. So thanks for tuning in and have a great rest of the day.